We begin by revisiting the opioid epidemic. This week, Tucson Medical Center filed suit against 31 opioid distributors and manufacturers. It comes as data shows physicians in Arizona are writing fewer prescriptions. According to state health officials, since Governor Doug Ducey declared an emergency in June 2017, the number of pills dispensed each month decreased 43%, going from more than 35,000 to just over 20,000 as of June 2018. But that doesn't necessarily translate into a drop in drug use. On the enforcement side, the Drug Enforcement Administration says it's seen an increase in the number of illicit opioid seizures. We learn more from Special Agent in Charge Doug Coleman.
We see a lot of fentanyl coming across the border here into Arizona now, and I think that that's directly related to the fact that the opioid prescription drugs are getting harder and harder to get, but we still have these addicted people out there that need to get their fix from someplace.
As the need increases, are smugglers or these guys who are making drugs becoming a little bit more sloppy and they're making it that now we're seeing things, fentanyl, that can kill people?
So fentanyl is a very, very dangerous drug, and here's why it's so dangerous. 2 milligrams of fentanyl is potentially lethal to somebody that doesn't have an opiate addiction and is not used to opiates. So what happens is I don't know that they're getting sloppier, but what happens is you're in Mexico and you're in a clandestine laboratory and you're manufacturing this product. And what you're doing is you're not a chemist, you're not in a laboratory setting, so you can't be sure exactly how much of the product is getting mixed up into what you're making because of the way that they mix it and manufacture it. One of those pills may only have 1 milligram of fentanyl in it. Another one of those pills in the same batch may have 4 milligrams of fentanyl in it. If you take the one, you're okay. If you take the one that has 4, it's going to kill you. And so they can't make sure that the appropriate dose is in each one of those pills. And I think that's the problem that we have with the overdoses. Just in the last 9 months, our agents here in Arizona, we've seized enough fentanyl to potentially kill 50 million Americans.
You say they come across the border, coming through the ports or outside the ports. Is this a new marijuana smuggling?
Now, most of our hard drugs are going to come through the ports. They're usually secreted in vehicles and in hidden compartments of vehicles. For the heroin and the fentanyl, because it's such a powerful drug and you can actually smuggle it in relatively small quantities to make a good profit, we'll actually see it strapped to people's bodies. We will see it internally carried. So there's a lot of different ways that they're getting it across, but the hard stuff usually comes through the ports.
If we know it's coming through the ports, why can't we stop it there?
So a lot of people don't realize this, but Nogales Port of Entry, for example, 70% of the winter produce that comes into the United States comes in through that particular port. So the volume is so high that we can't possibly stop every car there and search every car, especially when you're talking about something that can be brought across in as small a quantity as 1 pound or 2 pounds and hidden in a vehicle.
So the governor will say the legal prescriptions are down, but the illicit drugs on your end, they're up.
Yeah, so what's happened is that we've had this huge explosion of opiate addicts in the United States. And the cartels are smart enough to figure out that, hey, if people are addicted to opiates, they're also going to move to heroin. So what happens, they start the heroin, and probably 3 or 4 years ago, we saw a massive influx of heroin coming across from the Mexican cartels. And then in order to compete with each other, they started producing the fentanyl product, which is a stronger opiate product.
So what does Arizona look like when the government is really trying to clamp down on prescriptions, but the market is still there for the same product?
I think Arizona was definitely in the forefront of passing the legislation to try to limit the amount of the prescriptions that come across. And DEA is doing some stuff. We're trying to lower the amount. We just announced that we're going to lower the amount that's allowed to be manufactured in the United States as well. We announced that yesterday. And I think all these things are big steps. I think the problem is that we've got a lot of people out there that have addiction problems, and we're going to have to deal with that issue next. So it's going to be in increments. The bad thing is that this is a very complex problem that's taken years to get to. It's not going to be solved overnight.
I know you've said this before, we just can't blame the enforcement arm of this. Who else needs to be at the table in figuring out how to solve this problem?
Whenever we talk about the opioid crisis, we have to look at each other because we're all responsible. Doctors are responsible by the way that they prescribed. Medical schools are responsible by the way that they taught the doctors how to do it. We as the American consumer are responsible because we demanded these products. Big pharmaceutical companies won't make opioids if we don't demand them and doctors don't prescribe them for us. So we're all responsible for this. And I think that we're finally getting to that point here in this country where we realize that we're all responsible and everybody that has a role in it is doing their part. But I think that we're still a ways to go. The new overdose numbers just came out from last year. They're still up. So unfortunately, I think there's a possibility that this problem hasn't reached its apex yet. but I do think that the things that are being put in place are going to help the problem over the long term. But remember, this is a 20-year problem. This all started about 20 years ago when OxyContin came onto the market. That's when this whole issue started. It took us 20 years to get here. It's not going to be solved in a day.